What is Magic the Gathering? When I was in fourth grade, near the end of the year sometime, in the last week of school or somewhere thereabout, I asked my mom if she would buy me Pokemon cards while we were at Walmart. My mother rolled her eyes at me, and she declared that if I really wanted to play a card game that was good, that I could just play something she called Magic with my dad, since there was no way I'd have as much fun playing a game that I couldn't play with my dad, and we could also share our cards to save money that way. So, on that night in 2011, I asked my dad to teach me to play the Magic game. My dad, who had been regularly playing the game since the Ice Age set, but had been technically playing since white bordered dual lands were printed, since he had tundras that he traded for cokes, sat me down at the coffee table in our living room, and he taught me how to play Magic the Gathering using old decks that were less complicated than the new stuff he was playing with in Standard. We sat on the floor, and my dad played some sort of old as hell black deck that had Bad Moon and Black Knight in it. I, on the other hand, got to play some sort of Howling Mine deck with Icy Manipulator to tap the Howling Mine down so that only you got to draw two cards with it. I don't think I won a single game that night, but the art on the cards and the fact that they seemed to tell a story, and the fact that the story the cards told was directly related to the rules of the game with the color system was the most fascinating thing I'd ever been shown in a game. The next day or so, my dad brought home a deck that I can't even remember at this point, and a different deck which was way cooler, and they were both more advanced, since I had asked my dad to try out the newer cards since I now knew how the old person cards worked. The cards we played with were from some sort of Innistrad block multi-set draft or something, or maybe standard decks. My dad whooped my ass over and over with a vampire tribal deck, as he called it then, but when we traded decks so I could try playing the vampires, something crazy happened. I finally won a game. I dealt the killing blow to my dad by hitting him with a Vampire Nighthawk, which wasn't printed in any of the Innistrad sets, so I don't think they were actually draft decks. The Vampire Nighthawk had gotten to a huge size for me, which was like 5'6", because I had a Rakish Heir and a Stromkirk Captain sitting on the board buffing it. I said to my dad when I won, jokingly, that I guess my vampire eats you then. And my dad responded to me with the phrase that cemented Magic the Gathering as a thing in my life. He said, well, that's what happens when a planeswalker loses a duel. I, with my vampire cards, sleeved in orange Ultra Pro plastic sleeves that had the funny little weird glowy circle on them, was a planeswalker. A wizard. I had won a duel against my father, also a planeswalker, and every card in my deck was a real creature that I magically summoned to fight in that duel. I could travel from world to world like nobody else. That's what the sets were. And my deck was my memories, and I called upon the land but for power. That's what tapping the lands were. And my hand was my current thoughts. Mill was the destruction of my memory, and discard was making me forget what I had been thinking about a moment ago. That week, on the last day of fourth grade, I brought the 4 decks to school and taught anyone who would sit down with me how to play the game. I carried at least 2 Magic the Gathering decks with me every single day I went to school for the rest of my life, until the Magic the Gathering club at my high school disbanded in sophomore year, when every single other member graduated. That orange-sleeved deck sat in my backpack from 5th grade to 10th grade, and 5 decks joined it along the way that I made. My red-sleeved demon deck and the black-white devotion deck sleeved in these disgusting, sticky, staticky Teysa Karlov sleeves that were oriented the wrong direction because her art was her laying sideways on a couch. And the green-sleeved blue-green deck, which was the first deck I actually ever built myself that I had made originally at Theros pre-release with my dad and my best friend, that sported a lightly damaged Thassa that I had dropped on the ground in excitement over having opened my first Mythic Rare card. The red-blue deck with hangerback walkers that I had gotten for my birthday that were something crazy, like $10 whole for a card. And that one with Flipwalker Chandra that was sleeved in the ugliest teal sleeves I could possibly find because I thought it was funny to have green sleeves on a red-blue deck. I also had an Ixalan-era Merfolk deck, which was sleeved in purple, but it wasn't standard legal in the end because I just added Lorwyn Merfolk to it. And they all sat together in my backpack in harmony. Each of those decks had part of me in them, and every time I played one with one of my friends, or at a tournament, or at lunch, or in the bus loop, or before school in the gym on the bleachers, or in the back seat of a moving car, or at midnight, the day that Shadows over Innistrad or Eldritch Moon came out, or in the middle of class, or on school field trips to different states, or in detention, or at the beach, or by the pool, or at Science Olympiad competition. It was like the world of Magic the Gathering was real to me. What is Magic the Gathering? When I was in 7th grade, my birthday party was playing a Magic the Gathering cube draft that my dad and I built out of bulk we bought from the local game store. My friends turned up to my house where we'd set up a big table, and we ate snacks and drank soda and drafted all day. In 8th grade, my birthday party was a journey into Nyx pre-release, facilitated by leftover kits we bought from the store just across the border to the next city. In that personal pre-release, my friends and I had my dad set up a tournament bracket, and we played for bragging rights and prizes in the form of candy and shiny foil cards my dad and I had picked out from the local game store in my neighborhood. My friends and I talked and talked and talked about the story. All of my favorite characters were there on the cards. And when Chandra, my favorite planeswalker at the time, killed Ulamog and Kozilek in Oath of the Gatewatch with the help of Nissa binding them to the plane, and Jace and Gideon and Jory N, it was like I was there. Every time I duplicated Fall of the Titans with my Pyromancer's goggles at FNM, I got to relive the triumph of Over the Eldrazi again and again. What is Magic the Gathering? When I went to college, I didn't take anything but my clothes, my computer, food, and my Magic the Gathering cards. I convinced my first roommate to give it a try because he liked Pokemon cards, and we began playing. 4 years later, he and a dozen or so other people who I either directly taught how to play the game or were taught by someone that I taught how to play the game, now play the game. I convinced many of these people to play the game, and we share the game together. What is Magic the Gathering? In October of 2020, Wizards of the Coast announced that there would be 5 mechanically unique cards that you could only acquire by purchasing them for $50 from the Wizards of the Coast website. These 5 mechanically unique cards depicted characters not from Magic the Gathering, but from the Walking Dead television show. Right this second, as I record this video, just one of the cards from this secret lair, the one I wanted for my human deck at the time, costs $38.70. You cannot buy the secret lair anymore. The version of the card I would actually want to use, which has a guy from Innistrad on it instead of Rick from The Walking Dead, costs almost $40 on its own. I did not have $50. What is Magic the Gathering? On August 16th, 2021, Mark Rosewater said about the controversial Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set that future sets with non-magic properties will not be premier sets. Because Wizards of the Coast had made a promise that literally everyone who actually plays the game and isn't a complete knuckle-dragging, drooling Neanderthal fucking moron has identified is absolutely terrible for the game and completely unfair to players in the form of the reserved list promise, which has resulted in some Magic the Gathering cards being worth hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per copy, and they refuse to repeal that promise because they made a promise. People, including me, assumed that Morrow was telling the truth. Even if it somehow turned out to be bad for players to have Magic the Gathering be about Magic the Gathering, they would hold to their word like they had done with the wretched reserved list, which prohibits me from being able to play Legacy or Vintage whatsoever, because I am kept out of the format by the reserved list. What is Magic the Gathering? In 2021, after watching Spice8Rack's video on The Thran, I discovered Phil Dawson's unofficial Magic the Gathering audiobooks podcast and Gen Dokeshi's Voice of All audio drama, which was made in collaboration with a gazillion other kind people, some of whom I know the names of and speak to, and some of whom I have not had the pleasure of meeting personally. These audio programs and Spice8Rack's videos got me through one of the roughest times in my life, a time where the adults in charge of protecting me at my university had stomped on me and discarded me, lied to me, and manipulated me for their own gain because they had hearts of coal. The characters brought to life by the magic stories and given voice by these podcasts and videos via their narrators and voice actors were a part of me more than ever before as I lay bedridden from the trauma the world had brought upon me for the crime of being different. My love of the art and the passion of the people on the other side of the screen gave me strength. Every time I read the word bog, I now hear it the way that Gen said it when they narrated Children of the Nameless. And whenever I think of Chandra or Vraska's voices, I hear them in the voices of the actors who portrayed those characters on Voice of All. When I read dialogue from Karn or Urza, I hear Phil Dawson's voices for them. Spice8Rack's eugenics video pushed me to think about the things I read and consume in a way that I hadn't been doing previously. These people, because of Magic the Gathering, made me a better person. The struggles of the characters in the stories, like Ashnod and Zansha and Chandra and Vraska, spoke to me. Not being understood by the world was something I shared with these characters. It's one thing to read dialogue, but hearing it makes the characters real. I was ultimately inspired to make a YouTube channel named after Ashnod, through which I could make videos about League of Legends and Magic the Gathering. I haven't made a video in over a year now. What is Magic the Gathering? Morrow is a fucking liar. On October 25th, 2024, Wizards of the Coast announced that Universes Beyond sets will be equal in number to in-universe Magic the Gathering sets. They shall enter the game via standard legal premier sets. The long-awaited, for years, Lorwyn Return set, which is the reason I've even kept up hope of playing Standard again, since the printing of Settle the Wreckage and the power creep of board wipes since that card's printing has basically ruined the format for me, has disappeared from 2025's timeline in favor of Standard legal Universes Beyond key jangling slop. What is Magic the Gathering? In 2023, I had my middle name changed to Ashnod. I named myself after my favorite Magic the Gathering character. My other choices on that list were also Magic the Gathering characters. I could have been Zoncha, or Vraska, or Chandra, or Thalia, but Ashnod's name sung to me, so I took it and I attached it to myself, and I made it mine. But Wizards of the Coast says that Ashnod and Zoncha and Thalia and Vraska and Chandra aren't important anymore. They're no more important to Magic the Gathering than Frodo Baggins or SpongeBob SquarePants or Hatsune Miku or fucking Tony Stark. My love for these characters and their stories isn't important anymore, and neither is my love of the game. What's important is that the line on some fucking freak's spreadsheet goes up more for Universes Beyond products than for real Magic the Gathering products. A line that measures money in the millions of dollars. Going up a bit more. I'm meant to believe that the stories and the game, which have connected me to family and friends and acquaintances and role models, which gave me one of my names, is not important. Because some ghouls in suits who care for nothing but money and greed say so. Fuck Wizards of the Coast. And fuck Hasbro. What is Magic the Gathering? Magic the Gathering is the most important piece of art that I have ever touched, and no soulless corporate ghoul can take that importance away from me, and it shouldn't be able to be taken away from you if you care about it the way that I do. Even when these abominable vampires have strangled every single coin out of the world, they won't be satisfied, but they can't take the Magic the Gathering that made me. It is intangible, Magic the Gathering is me. It is every single person who has ever loved these stories and characters and to whom they have meant something of importance. And even when the game is fully completed like a fucking Phyrexian, people will be able to remember the love and good the game and its community brought before it was turned into just another money printer for capitalist pigs. The stories and the characters I love and the community around them may be unimportant to the disgusting ghouls at Wizards of the Coast and at Hasbro, but I will carry them in my heart all the way to the end of my life. And on my gravestone will be the name of a Magic the Gathering character, because Magic's story is important.